Uh, Anybody has any questions, please use the raise your hand function. I'll get started and then throw it to whoever has questions. So, Kenny, obviously a tough loss last weekend at PNC as part of a doubleheader. But how's the team looked, in training this week?
Yeah, they've looked really sharp. I think we're all disappointed in the result. There's some positives, a lot of positives that came from that game. But I think the guys are really focused for what they need to do in Portland.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll throw it to Billy Mears from Dynamo Theory. Go ahead, Billy.
Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate it. We saw that D'Alessandro Herrera went over to HBU. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that aspect of things with players coming and going.
Yeah, we're going to lose quite a few guys coming up in the next month and a half. Obviously, guys going to school. You've got Bryce Barnum going to Duke. You've got Reese going to Virginia. Eric Mong, a lot of these guys that are college bound, and it just speaks to the pathway of some of these players. So I think one of the positives of what we're doing right now is we have Kieran Sargent from Georgetown, who has just come off a Final Four run, starting games as a freshman. He's back into training. And then we have Josh Hellenberger, who is going into his third year. He's actually transferred from Clemson to go to Akron. But two really good academy players that we had in the past years and didn't have this platform. So, as we move guys on, we also bring guys back in that are going through that college process to evaluate and see where they are, how close they are to maybe continuing their growth and becoming a part of our project. But it's exciting for those guys to be able to go and play and play at a high level.
Appreciate it. And going up against Portland, they are winless on the season. They've given up 25 goals with that -17 GD. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how you keep the team focused moving forward and not underestimate a team like this. And even though they've allowed 14 goals just in May.
To be honest, I don't think we have proven that we can underestimate anyone, right? And I think that's the players' mentality, specifically the older guys in the leadership group that, we have not proven over the last 6 weeks that we should ever underestimate anyone in this league. So I don't think that was necessarily the factor over the last couple of weeks, but I do think the focus has been a lot on us and continuing to create chances, continuing to make sure that we're sharp in those final moments. And to be fair, looking at the Kansas City game, is it a penalty? Again, that's something. But for us, we didn't do ourselves justice in that final third. So the focus this week is about controlling what we can control. We can't control calls. We can't control fields. We can't control fans. What we can control is our execution. So we've really been harping on as a team and as a staff, the details that go into some of the positives that we've had over the last weeks, where we're creating a lot of chances in the run of play. We just need that little final product. And I have a very good feeling that the pressure that the boys are putting on themselves and the pressure that the staff is putting on them as well, it's going to pay off, and it's going to create a little run here for us, like we had in the beginning of the season.
Okay, and last one for me. With Portland, they've given up multiple goals in 9 of 10 of their matches, and we saw with the adjustments at halftime last game and doing well, creating chances coming out of the half. Are we going to see Papa and Kyle Edwards up top again?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see both of those guys. I think with the international break ending as well, it's been a long couple weeks for both groups, especially the first team, where they had a lot of run of games leading into the break, and then obviously they've got a massive game tomorrow. So a lot of the players have been used in training to help prepare those players, to prepare the first team. But I think tomorrow we'll be pleasantly surprised with the performance that these boys put up. But yes, Papa and Kyle will be playing. And Sporting Kansas City game, I thought Jacob Evans was one of our best players. He kind of goes unnoticed sometimes because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but he's a key player in our attack. no matter where he plays. If he plays in the midfield or if he plays out wide as an inverted winger, he's a really key part of the distribution to get that final product. So I'm excited. And Kyle and Papa, Kyle's a bit different because he hasn't been able to play, but Papa's form is starting to get there. We have to remember sometimes these guys, they're used to college seasons, and these college seasons, they play their 15, 20 games in 3 months, and then they have the rest of the year to prepare for the next season. So sometimes these seasons are a grind, and it's part of the development process. And, what we saw in Pop at the beginning of the season, and then obviously as he's kind of grown into what a professional season looks like, and the demands that we put on him, because obviously we are his biggest critic, minus himself. He's very self-reflective. These two players, I think, complement each other. I think they're a massive threat in this league. But there is a growth period of that. They do have to continue to get to know each other in a competitive game. At training, it's fantastic, but these games are the proving ground of how they can work together. Kyle could have very easily scored 2 goals in the first 20 minutes of the last game. And then we saw what happens when you don't play. Obviously, the conditions were tough, but 60 minutes, bless his heart, he's gassed and he's done what he can. So we've really tried to continue to prepare him to be able to execute when you get into that game situation.
Appreciate that, Coach. I do have one more on the Apple deal. Just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on the Apple deal with the World Cup coming up and the overall exposure it's going to give the team and the league in general, just for the guys.
Yeah, I think everybody's excited about that. Obviously, on a day-to-day basis, the things that impact us are what we can control in here. And I think, number one, Houston becoming a host city for the World Cup is huge. Obviously, the economic impact that it makes for all of the cities that are going to host the World Cup is huge. The buzz around it. What the World Cup did in 1994 for our country, as far as where we sit right now and us discussing a second league in the MLS, that can't go unnoticed. And I think the one thing that we really are excited about here is that we believed Houston is a perfect place to host a World Cup. The Apple TV deal, I think that's massive because you've got one place to watch both leagues. The more exposure these players get, the more pressure that gets put on them, the more accessible the league is to the general population. The way this league is going to blow up over the next couple of years, it's something that helps with the development of these players. They actually are making strides to get to that first team, and this is part of it. This exposure is part of it. So really, really excited about that.
Appreciate your time, Coach.
Yeah, no problem.
Next, we'll go to Manuel Olivares from Area Sports Network. Go ahead, Manuel.
Hey, Kenny, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Quick, I know we're jumping off of the questions of players going back to college, and you mentioned some players that are coming in with a flux of coming in and out. Do you have any prospects or from MLS Next or even from transfers that you're planning to add to this team?
Yeah, it's a fine balance because part of developing a team and a club is obviously always keeping your eyes out for young players that have potential that we might be able to get. So Mikael was a massive target for us. I think everybody has seen what benefit he's brought. You look at the guys that we brought in, we're looking for players like that all the time. And we have weekly scouting meetings. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into bringing a Dynamo 2 player, from a budget, from a roster standpoint, from international spots, from potential to progress to the first team. So the one thing that we are really proud of is we are bringing in a lot of guys to look at. And, some of these players, they might be college players that are going to go into the draft next year. They might be young college players that we need to keep our eye on down the road. They may be young players that are American that have been overseas playing internationally, and now they've come back and they want to get into the league. So at any given week, we have 4 or 5 guys in where we're taking a look at it, and then they go into a bucket of what's the time frame on if we're interested when they would join the team. So it's an ongoing process. But even more ongoing than that is, this week is the second week in a row that we've had more than 4 players from the under 17s into the first team. We had a training session last week where we had Leo Gattal, Andre Gattal's brother, who I think he's just turned 14. We had him into training, and people may say, "Oh, well, he's 14. The kid's excellent, and he deserves an opportunity to train," and he did fine. So part of our process too is developing these guys inside our club. We've seen that with Diego Rosas. Excuse me. We've seen that with Lalito, who's been in. We played 11v11 yesterday, and Lalito was one of the most impactful players on the field, and that's fantastic for him. He's going to play with the 17s tomorrow in a friendly game, but continuing to have that progression of those players. So not only are we looking outside, we're always looking to strengthen the roster, but we're also making sure that what we have in-house is getting the opportunities as well.
That's great to hear, Coach. Really appreciate that. And lastly, this weekend, it's the halfway point in the season. What's your assessment of how the team's doing this far, and what changes or improvements could we expect the second half of the season?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I'll put it this way. I think if at the beginning of the season someone was to say, okay, let's assume this game, the next game isn't the middle one, but you're 7-3-1 at the middle of the season. I think with the uncertainty of what this project would look like, the work that we were putting in, the way the league has evolved, I think we'd be very happy with that. I think if that were given to us as an option at the beginning of the season. Now, that doesn't mean that we're satisfied. Obviously, the staff and the players, we feel like we're better than potentially our record is right now. We feel like we've dropped some games, but I would much rather that happen now than for us to have a false sense of where we are. The one thing you're always going to get from the staff and from the players in this club is that we never can be satisfied with the results or the way things are going. We have to continue to improve. A big part of that is Paulo has been excellent bringing guys into the first team environment. He's been fantastic about guiding a lot of our high potential young players on Dynamo 2 in a way that they're getting opportunities that progress them when they come back down. So I think some of the things that you'll see moving in now what you guys have seen is you've seen a little bit of the style of how we as a staff want to coach, right? We want to high press, we want to keep the ball, but we also want to be very, very, very active going forward. We want to create chances, set pieces. We want to be dialed in. We want to be stingy on defensive set pieces, and we want to create chances on every attacking set piece we get. The great thing that's happened over the last 3 weeks is we've changed systems, right? We've tweaked some things. We've maneuvered through putting players in different positions. So as the season goes on, we can continue to keep the principles the same, but based on the opponent, we can move players in positions to highlight their skill set. So, the big thing for me is getting back to the multiple goals a game. That has to be something that we're really focused on. One of the key things for me is I know we can keep clean sheets, but there's nothing like going up a goal early, pushing for the second, third, or fourth goal to make you defensively stronger. So we really want to get back to the way we were at the beginning of the season. I know the first 2 games we only scored 1 goal, but really, really putting pressure on other teams and having them worry about us. So statistically, obviously, you can look at those statistics and you can say, okay, yeah, we've improved in some possession, things like that, but it's about creating those chances again. So getting the players in the right positions higher up the field to put teams on their back foot. And then obviously, it's about the players getting to know each other. They're really finding a flow of each other, understanding what each other's going to do with the ball. And in any club, it takes a little bit of time for the team to gel personnel-wise. We've had a lot of movement of players, but now everybody that is a key part of this group has played in a game. I mean, you look at the players that we've had in, they're starting to understand more what it's going to take, especially in a season that might not be as long as the MLS season, but it's probably the longest season these guys have ever played. So it's important that they find that connection and they continue to fight. The one thing that I won't ever think is a problem is the culture of the group. We met with the leadership group again this week just to see what they needed, if there was anything that needed to be we needed to be aware of. And the group that we have of older players are bringing along a Dilo and a Diego and a Jathan, and they're showing them what it's like to lead, not only verbally, not only in the locker room, but by example on the field. And that's an exciting part for me. I'm excited to see now that kind of the newness of the league is worn off for these guys, where maybe playing in a stadium isn't something that puts them in awe. And now they can actually grind and play.
All right.
All right, thank you, Coach.
No problem.
And one thing's there. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Guys, I'll have media resources available for you later this afternoon. And yeah, I hope to see you all later in the week.
All right, take care, Harris.